Hey, folks, welcome back to the Carl Zahn Show, episode 26, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I very well might be. As usual, lots of stuff going on. Please hit the like, subscribe button. We're trying to grow this channel here. You'll notice we have an extra mic set up today, so I got a very special guest coming on in just a few minutes. I wanted to start the show by just a little kind of weekly recap. Politics. Obviously, the riveting CNN debate with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, hosted by the completely unbiased Dana Bash. Pretty fascinating interview. So first of all, when you take the commercial breaks out and all of that, I think there was something like 18 minutes of actual interview. Tim Walz, I'm not really sure. He kind of sat there like an emotional support trained bear, big hulking mass sitting next to Kamala Harris, all ready to jump into action if he needed to. And kind of fascinating watching the new iteration of Kamala Harris and this. So the incessant cackling is gone. They have beaten that out of her. And instead now she has this immensely fake, super deep, thoughtful presentation with lots of facial contortions into different poses of deep thought. It's just so unbelievably fake. I hardly know where to begin with the whole thing. First of all was the presentation. So you would think we've waited almost 40 days for an interview with Kamala Harris, a press interview, and it wasn't even a live interview. It was edited, so of course they had time to fix all the mistakes and splice it all together like a hostage video. But one of the first things that impressed me was the kind of quick, honestly, it's a little bit of a dog and pony show that we're running here, but we have a table and stuff like that. I think we actually spend more time setting up than they did for this interview. It just seemed like they kind of unfolded a picnic table and they had a few folding chairs there, and the whole thing seemed so impromptu. And then behind them, out this big window, was the side of the Harris Walz tour bus, which seemed like kind of an odd backdrop for me. So the whole kind of thing seemed awkward, both in terms of content and the setup itself. Kamala Harris, obviously everyone's talking about it. We don't need to drone on and on about it. She's going to build the wall. She's going to enforce illegal immigration. She's pro-fracking now. In fact, I've heard rumors that there is some unreleased video of her and Tim Walz actually fracking in the parking lot after the video. I'm not sure what that's all about. I'm hoping that video gets leaked out, but there is word that they did a good solid 8 minutes of fracking behind the tour bus after the video. So that comes out, and she is surely pro-fracking. I'm not going to say they fracked their brains out, but some fracking happened. Again, unsubstantiated. And I'm not sure who was... How do you do that in fracking? Not sure who the pitcher catcher was, put it that way. Like, who's the drill and who's the bedrock, if you get my drift. Fracking, by the way, a lot of people don't know, is like a hyphenated term for a hydrofracture. And we do it a lot up here in New England with drilled wells. So they drill wells down into the bedrock. If you don't get enough water coming in, they do hydrofracture, which is kind of a small implosion, opens up veins and stuff like that. Very similar to some procedures I've had done to help with my erectile dysfunction. Different kind of fracking and no hydro involved. So anyways, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, non-event. In fact, I think her numbers are kind of tanking after this debate because we didn't learn anything, and it's just utterly fake. Meanwhile, Trump is just on a roll with the RFK announcement. Tulsi Gabbard joined his effort this past week, gave him her full endorsement. So the stars seem to kind of be aligning for Trump. And so now really the biggest liability for Trump becomes Trump himself, as has always been the case. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about this in Aurora, Colorado. I'm sure everybody's seen this, but these Venezuelan gangs with like AR heavy weapons are taking over apartment complexes. So they're basically coming in like some kind of Venezuelan impromptu national guard and just kicking doors down, removing tenants and moving in, and they're taking over entire apartment complexes. So it's just stunning to me. And this is in Aurora, Colorado, so it's not like Seattle or Portland or Chicago, like one of these kind of sanctuary city states where you might expect this, this new level of kind of illegal immigrant takeover. But it's just stunning to me to watch the country. You look at this footage and you just think, this can't possibly be happening in America, but indeed it is. And then finally, just wanted to quick talk about prosecutor Jack Smith. So this was the prosecutor who was bringing the document case against Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. I don't know if you've seen pictures of him, but I like to call Jack Smith the Jackal because he's got a very rodent-like face and he's got the little kind of chipmunk teeth or beaver teeth, and he just kind of looks like rodent-esque. And so he has, because the Supreme Court gave immunity to presidents, not just Trump, but presidential immunity. And then a court in Florida dismissed the document case. So now Jack Smith, the Jackal Smith, has brought new indictments on Donald Trump in the Florida document case. And I was thinking it might be easier if they just did like an indictment buffet, right? So it'd be kind of like the Golden Corral of indictments. You just kind of go in and you pick the indictment you want. I'll have some spicy chicken wing indictments and the chicken nuggets and maybe the broccoli and cheddar. Let's just get it over with because this is exactly what this is now. And what's most stunning to me is that the Democrats haven't learned that all this lawfare and weaponization of the justice system against Trump has just blown up in their face time and time again. They go after him legally. He takes in more money. His poll numbers go up. So again, the Democratic Party at large is just remarkably like a golden lab with the fake stick throw. You just pretend to throw a stick and the dog perks up and looks all around. And you can do that all day over and over and over again. And this is the Democratic Party not learning their lesson. So let the little bucktooth jackal go ahead and bring in some more indictments. It's likely that Judge Meacham in New York is probably going to try to put Donald Trump in jail mid-September anyways. I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think he'll be there long, but I do think they're going to want that visual. So, quick recap on politics. And so a very special guest. So this guy I'm bringing on, as we've actually done radio together many times over the years. He's a sports guy, so this is not political so much. But he's got great radio chops, did a lot of guest kind of with me in studio when I was doing terrestrial radio, regular FM radio. And then we actually did years ago kind of a sports politics mix podcast here at this studio, which was called 50 Minutes with Carl Zahn. And I think you can still find that on Podbean or Soundbean or I don't know, some kind of bean. And additionally, another interesting thing about my guest is he was actually with me in either April or May of 2015 when we saw Donald Trump, before he announced at the very beginning of what has become this historic journey. And I remember then I had urged him to come with me, even though he's not political, because I thought this could be history in the making and you'll be telling your grandkids about this someday. And so he did come to that event, and the first and last event with Donald Trump were there maybe 100, 150 people. And his name actually got mentioned later that year when I interviewed Donald Trump for my show at 107.7 The Pulse in New Hampshire. And at the very end of it, Donald Trump actually mentioned him when he invited me and my upcoming guest to join him and his family at a special function. This was the night of the primary vote, and we had done a big event for him at the SNHU Arena in New Hampshire. And my upcoming guest was not able to make it that night. It was snowing out, and he was in Massachusetts, but I was lucky enough to have gone that night and met Trump's whole family. And I think I talked about that on my very first episode here. So without further ado, my guest and son, Dominic Zahn. Dom, step right up. How's it going, bud?
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, welcome to the show. I see you're wearing your FC Cincinnati colors. So just to give the audience a little background, Dom was a sports management major down at Nichols College in Dudley, Mass. Spent his first year or two out of there working for the Saints and the Pelicans down in New Orleans until the government decided that adults could not make a decision to go see a sports game themselves because of COVID, and the sports industry closed down. So he finished off his contract down there with his employer, came back home for a few months, and then he sensed what was happening with Major League Soccer. And we were a bit surprised when he told us that he was going to Cincinnati, where they had just built a brand new $250 million soccer-only stadium, TQL Stadium. And so what, you've been out there 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah. Fourth season with them. I think 3.5 years out there. And it's been great. It's been great to watch it grow and develop. You know, we're really fortunate to be in a soccer crazy market, because there's certainly some teams across the league that aren't in that situation. But yeah, it's been really fun to watch us go from, 10,000 fans to full building of just over 25,000. And, for us, when I started, one of the worst teams in the league to now one of the best. So
I wanted to touch on that because I know that your mom and I were a bit surprised when you said you were going to join a soccer team because you played college football, and football has always been your thing. But I think, and it turned out your instincts were dead on about where soccer was going. And then I remember when we first moved you out there and the stadium wasn't quite done yet, but it was just TQL Stadium. If you have a chance to check it out online, it is just an unbelievable facility, state of the art. And so, it's great for you. You've seen the team turn around. They were just one game short of winning playoffs last year, right?
Yep. Yeah, tough loss at the end of last year. And but no, it's been great with a new regime that's come in since and put together a really strong foundation and a good program of soccer.
That.
So it's exciting. We'll see where the playoffs goes here the next couple months, and then it's the working in the MLS. It's such a quick off season that by the time the holidays are over, you're back. You're back for another season. Right. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been really fun for me too to watch not just you grow out there and but to visit out there and kind of fell in love with Cincinnati myself. It's kind of a Midwestern vibe. The people are very nice out there. It's a mid-sized city, I would say, so you really have city life, but it's not overwhelming. And turned out, I think, to be a really good choice for you. So naturally, we've enjoyed watching you grow with it and grow with the company. And of course, as you might expect, as any dad, it's turned me into a soccer freak. Something I never thought would happen, but I've really come to enjoy the game, especially as you begin to understand, like any new sport, understand how it works and all that. And I think another thing for me that early on, the realization, you don't think of it, but soccer is really an athletic, probably much more so than football, even though you've got football, the tackles and all that. But in terms of pure athleticism, these guys are running for 90 minutes, man, up and down. And it's not a basketball court. A soccer field seems like it's like a mile long. And these guys really work, man. They are true athletes.
It's not some of the running, the cardio that's needed. And we're at the point now in our season, obviously during the summer, you got to build in a couple hydration breaks during the game just because you have to, 90 degrees and humid. And, got to get a chance just to stop for a little bit, because it really, other than that, it doesn't stop. Other than
that's one of the things I noticed. And of course, you and I, as people would expect, we talk a lot, especially when there's a game going on. And you can see in the summer months when it's super hot, you see these guys are drenched, man. I mean, they are, like I said, it's hard to think of another sport like it. Basketball, certainly, you're up and down the court, but you're in a climate-controlled situation, too. So these guys, when they're out 90, 100-degree weather under the sun as well, if it's an open stadium, it really has impressed me what athletes these guys are. And I'm just so happy for you, especially Cincinnati, great city. I mean, they've got the Bengals, they've got the Reds. Is that there? I mean,
the baseball,
This town is sports. And if you
that's
watch,
for sure.
I've noticed watching like games at TQL Stadium with FC Cincinnati versus other soccer games. First of all, the attendance at your games is almost always full. But the Cincy fans are in a league of their own, man. They are nuts. And unfortunately, I have yet to actually catch a game there, but I'm dying to do that, to actually feel that vibe there, because I'm sure, as with most things, seeing it on TV and being there are, I'm sure, two completely different things, but their fans are dedicated.
I tell people all the time from my Saints days, playing at the Dome, 70,000, and New Orleans people love their football. I compare it to that stadium all the time, even though there's 50,000 less people. It's a different sport, but when that place is full and it's rocking, and like you said, Cincinnati is a huge sports town and a sports city. They love their teams to a degree, that it's sometimes when things aren't going well that it's, man, this is really
I've noticed
tough right now.
I have noticed it explicitly, like watching other soccer games versus Cincinnati. I mean, you have to see it to believe it, because the people are, there's people shirtless. They've got the paint. They've got the wigs. They've got the bubbles going. They've got smoke. I mean, these people are off the hook, insane enthusiasm for their team. And to be perfectly honest, it's probably equal measure fascination with the team because they're great. They've got this guy, Luca Acosta. They've really got some phenomenal players. But I have to say that part of the entertainment of the game is the Cincy fans, because it's just off the hook.
It's been, like I said, it's been great watching it grow and see the fan base come together. And if you're ever in the Cincinnati area and looking for something to do, FCC would be my first stop. It's,
for sure.
Between the environment, like you said, Lucho and the company there that we've got together, it's a really fun team to watch. And, the atmosphere from. Really, I mean, you'll see, if it's a 7:30 game, people are downtown by noon, and then you see the blue and orange everywhere. And from the whole city's perspective, it's a really fun day to have a match in town.
It's a great vibe. I'm really happy for you. I'm even a bit jealous, because I wish I could just live out there and enjoy that too, because it's such a great town. Lots of great restaurants. The people are great. I joked the first few times I was out there that even the homeless people are polite. Just everyone, it's a super good vibe. And in a way, I saw that same thing in New Orleans. I had been in New Orleans a few times before you lived there, but New Orleans is also another town where the culture is so rich. The people really seem, it's like a good vibe. It's so funny in politics, especially now, you hear about, what a racist country we are and all these awful things. But when you actually see how people live in real life, there's none of that in real life. I mean, you lived in New Orleans, obviously, super rich, multicultural. I'm sure you saw, there's none of that. Your friends, all different stripes, everybody gets along. And I see the same thing in Cincinnati. So it's always refreshing to get that taste of real life versus what a lot of us have hammered into our heads by the biased media so often, that this country's awful and all of that. Because in real life, people don't live like that at all. One of my favorite stories about Cincinnati was one of my first times out there visiting Dom, and he knows where I'm going. We were coming out of the hotel lobby, and an older gentleman approached me, a black guy, and showed me his driver's license. And he said, geez, I can't get out of the parking garage in my car, and I lost my wallet, or I need some money. And I gave the guy $20. And he then and I kind of knew I got hustled, but he spent like half an hour with us after that, right? I introduced him to my son, to Dominic, and the guy walked us all over town.
Gave us dinner recommendations,
Yes.
and then I think I told him, I don't know, maybe a few months later, I saw him, and the same shtick.
The last time I was there, he did the same thing,
exactly,
and I had to tell the guy, I said, I hate to rain on your parade, but I've already been victimized once. And he was super good humored about it. And even that time we ended up talking, I think we were talking for like half an hour outside the hotel. Very gracious guy. So I guess my point is, people, and this has been my observation throughout life, because I certainly did some city travel, doing comedy and stuff like that. People receive you as you receive them, right? So kind of the golden rule, treat people the way you'd like to be treated yourself, and more often than not, that's what you're going to get in return. I talked a little bit before you came on about the Trump thing, and I know you're not real political, but you think back to that day in Bedford, because it was so new and refreshing in a way, also kind of nerve-wracking, but to see this, he's not really a politician, but to see a guy completely unbridled like that. And I think that day in Bedford was the first day, there were some major news outlets there. If you remember, that camera set up across the
If I remember it correctly, it was, I think there were whispers that there could be, he could run and it could take place. But like you said, 150
he hadn't
people
announced yet, but
in a backyard and, at a nice Bedford home.
But I remember I remember that day because he started that day, I think, with the fake news, like those people.
Yeah.
It was the first time I saw him excoriating the press, which again, from a political standpoint was, I've had this joke all along. If you heard that politicians avoid the third rail, right? They call it the electrified third rail, the third rail of politics. And I remember saying this in some interview back then about Trump, that he not only doesn't avoid the third rail, he gets down and dry humps it. Trump is not afraid of any of these third rail issues with politics. And that was a perfect example where he started calling out the press right from day one. And it's one of the reasons I was so involved with his campaign the first time around. I don't know how I found the time to do it, but it was just so fascinating to me to watch this guy. And then immediately went to thousands of people, then 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people at Trump events, and then 20,000 that got in, 20,000 that couldn't get in. Utterly fascinating to watch. So I'm really glad that you got that little glimpse early on, and somewhere along the line I was able to get a picture of you at that Bedford thing that he signed for us. So
it didn't take long after that it blew up.
It blew up.
In fact, he was on his trail and he had announced, and it was really cool and unique to even see him.
In fact, the next event that we did for him after that was in Laconia, and I've talked about that before. We rented a Grange Hall. So at that point, I was involved with his campaign as a volunteer. We rented a Grange Hall that seats 130 people or something. We were expecting a similar turnout as we had in Bedford. Excuse me. And then 3,500 people showed up at this event in Laconia, which was unheard of for politics then. And that was really my first inkling, and I think Donald Trump's first inkling that, wow, this thing has legs. There's something happening here. And then the rest, as they say, is history, right?
That's it, yeah.
What's on tap for you? So you've just bought a house in Covington.
Yeah.
So you see yourself staying in Cincy for a few years, I take it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot on the horizon with the club and just with the league in general. A lot hopefully good taking place. We recently put in a bid for a women's team on the NWSL side. So excited to see where that goes. But regardless, I think FCC is on the rise, and the World Cup will be here next year, which is obviously a big deal for soccer and international soccer that, the U.S. will be able to host along with Mexico and Canada. So, excited just to see the sport grow and see FCC continue to grow along that. I know we talked a little bit about it last night at dinner, but from a business terms, this is only year 9. So
it's amazing.
It's still very new and in the community. It's still, even though it feels like we've kind of hit that peak. We're still growing. We're still
Yeah, and they're a
rising up,
solid
so,
team. Like
yeah.
I remember thinking the first trip out there, and I'm looking at this $250 million stadium, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, some guys really went out on a limb here with a business model, business model that's really, it's a huge investment, man. That's a huge risk. And you have to think to yourself, well, I can see this place 5 years from now with tumbleweeds and stray dogs and weeds growing up around the building. But their management and their coach, Pat Noonan, it really has been phenomenal.
Yeah, from the top down with ownership who made that big investment in the stadium to the front office and, to someone like myself who's just selling tickets. We have a really good group and a group that's ambitious and looking to do a lot more and kind of lead the league and, initiatives and growth.
Like all parents, we live vicariously through our children, and I just could not be more proud of you and excited for you to have made that move and be watching this thing. I mean, you literally got in on the ground floor and have been a part of it, and it just I watch you hustle, and I know you work hard, and there's days you're at the office all day, and then you go if there's a home game, and he's working from 6 a.m. till 11 at night, and like I did when I was that age, which I appreciate because I think when you're young and if you're doing something you're excited about, it's kind of a self-energizing
it's easy
thing,
I tell people all the time, at the end of the day, it's sales, but I don't think I could sell anything else. I couldn't sell computer parts.
Well, and I think
medical devices. It's the passion of sport.
Yes.
And, being a part of the team, and really, I think some sports fans don't understand. It's the ultimate fandom, then some. To your point.
Well,
your livelihood depends on wins and losses to a degree. So
and I've seen that in you because you're one of 4 boys. But I've seen that in you since literally Little League, and I've got the pictures in my office still of you with your Marlins in little 7th grade. But this has been Dominic since he was a kid. Sports. And I'm just so happy for you that you found something you love. You knew you loved it. You carved a path for yourself to get there and make, because if we've always said, and people say all the time, if you can make a living doing something you're passionate about, it's not really work.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, but it's also, and I know for you, I'm quite sure that the excitement of the stadium and that environment is your thing. I can tell when I see you around there, even when you gave us a tour of it without a game going on, I could see your passion for it. And I get that because it's similar for me, like doing stand-up comedy and stuff like that. That's the arena. And that's the 30 minutes or 45 minutes that you live for, and you did all your writing and your prep and your rehearsal, and you drove all over New England doing open mics for nothing to get to that point where people are coming to see you and paying to see you tell your jokes. And it is like that's the pinnacle of it, is when you're there in that environment, live game, crowd, whole thing. So I just wanted to quickly, we'll wrap up here. We'll try to keep these under 30 minutes. But so, we had dinner last night, and then I took Dominic and my son Mitchell to see Reagan. So this is the Dennis Quaid movie. It just came out yesterday. It's been in the work for at least 4 or 5 years because I know I've been dying to see it. I've heard, I'm a big Dennis Quaid fan. I think he is a really underrated talent and actor. Also love him because he's a pilot, so all us pilots have that brotherhood. But I've always thought Dennis Quaid is like a real hot shit, super smart, underrated actor. And I've seen him talk about taking on this role of Reagan, which he said was very daunting, and he really had to think about whether he wanted to do it or not, because it's hard to take on a character that is that famous and that well known, to play a president. And I just thought he did a phenomenal job with it. But I was also glad for you and Mitch to see that little bit of history of Ronald Reagan, who folks who've watched the show know I've mentioned before, I just think was a remarkable man on so many levels. And even for me, honestly, to see this kind of movie-like overview of him going from his acting career, early days, into politics, governor of California, president, 2 terms, and then the landslide Reagan win, which we could see again in November with Donald Trump. Ronald Reagan's win in his second term was I think all but one state. I mean, it was a total landslide.
Yeah.
But fascinating watching him, don't you think?
No, it's a great movie. And yeah, for someone who obviously didn't live through that, I feel like I learned a lot more than I did.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought, like you said, Quaid did a great job of it.
Yeah,
I don't know the actor's name off the top of my head, but whoever played Nancy Reagan was great. I thought the
Penelope Ann Miller, I think. Yeah, your brother would know that. 'Cause
Right,
his
yeah.
brother's all about the movies.
But I thought the movie was great and did a great job, like you said, depicting from even his boyhood to adolescent and all the way through. So I highly recommend for anybody who's interested in the history.
I can't recommend the
to check
movie
it out.
enough. Even if you're not real political bent, this is a real slice of American history. I really thought Dennis Quaid did a great job. And I almost got out alive. And then as they were doing the trailer at the end and running credits, they were showing clips of actual photos of Ronald Reagan from childhood to early days in politics, his acting. And then as the movie trailed down and the credits ran off, there was actual footage of his funeral and Nancy Reagan coming up to his coffin and kissing it and, laying her head down on the coffin. And, that's where I kind of lost it. But I don't think I was the only one in the theater.
Yeah.
I mean, a very, very moving end. So, if I haven't been to an actual movie probably 2 or 3 years. There's just not that much that excites me, but I've been waiting a long time for this to come out because I've been listening to Dennis Quaid talk about it for years and years and years while they went back and more editing and stuff like that. So they really took a long time to fine-tune this. Thought John Voight was great. Long list of characters in the credits. So we actually hung around to watch the credits go by and see who was in it. Not the least of which was Peaches Quaid, which is Dennis Quaid's little bulldog that actually had a cameo as the Reagan's dog in the movie, a typical Dennis Quaid touch. So Reagan, the movie, can't recommend it enough. FC Cincinnati, TQL Stadium, check it out. Even if you're not a soccer fan, this stadium has like outdoor synchronized laser lighting. Like the night of their grand opening was... If you just Google on YouTube, TQL Stadium grand opening, check out this facility because it really is something else. Dom, great to have you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I guess we're going off to see your nephew at a football scrimmage now in town.
Yep.
And maybe we'll grab a bite to eat after that.
Yeah, sounds like a great day. But thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for joining us. Something a little different today. And as always... And I always have to remind people, our closing sentiment here is not blue Democrat. It's a reference, it's an aviation reference to the artificial horizon, which is blue is sky, brown is dirt. And the old adage in flying airplanes is keep the blue side up. So as we always close the show, keep the blue side up. Thanks, Dom.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.